All right, hi everyone, and we want to welcome all of you to our Women's Bible Study, and we're going to be looking at the Book of Esther. We are Talks with Torah Women, and we are just going to be sharing our thoughts and opinions on the Book of Esther in this video. We're four Torah-believing women who are studying together and discussing our views and beliefs that we have come across and feel convicted about. So we intend these Bible studies to be for women only, and any men who choose to stay and watch these videos are doing so at their own discretion. We do want to let you guys know that any nasty comments will be deleted and we will block you. So please be aware of that, especially if you're a man, who doesn't agree with this. We're making it very clear that this study is for women only. We are four women who are coming together. So really quickly to introduce ourselves, we have Sierra, and she is from Tennessee. She's been married for 3 years, and she's a stay-at-home mother of 2 children. She's also an online ESL teacher. And we have Gabrielle. She's from Oklahoma. She is 28 and she's been married for 7 years. She has a background in health and wellness and fitness industry and is inspiring to become a holistic nutritionist health coach. So that's really awesome, especially for those of us who want to improve our health and eat more in accordance with what Torah says. And she currently operates an organic, toxic-free in-home daycare. And then we have Gabby, who's from Arizona. She's been married for 6 years. She's a mother of 2, and she is a flight instructor. And it's so cool because Gabby's an actual pilot. And I've actually never met or had a friend who's a pilot. So I think it's so cool. And then me, I'm Monica, and I'm from California. I am an international English teacher, and I have a language school. I also love learning languages and linguistics. And I am also a college professor, and I'm currently, actually all of us, I can't just say me, but all 4 of us are currently growing organic farms. So that is something that we're going to be discussing along in these Bible studies. So we hope that if that's something that interests you, if you ever want to learn how to grow a garden, then we will definitely be hitting on those topics. Okay, so those are the introductions. Let's go ahead and start with the Book of Esther.
Okay. I'm going to preface that I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Bible version. So some of the names and places might sound a little bit different because it's just giving their Jewish name. So chapter 1. These events took place in the time of Achashverosh, the Achashverosh who ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. It was in those days when King Achashverosh sat on his royal throne in Shushan, the capital, in the 3rd year of his reign, that he gave a banquet for all his officials and courtiers. The army of Persia in Media, the nobles and the provincial officials were in attendance. He displayed the dazzling wealth of his kingdom and his great splendor for a long time, 180 days. At the end of that time, the king gave a 7-day banquet in the courtyard of the royal palace garden for all the people, both great and small, there in Shushan, the capital. There were white cotton curtains and blue hangings fastened to silver rods, with cords of fine linen and purple. The columns were marble. The couches for reclining at table were of gold and silver on a mosaic flooring of malachite, marble, mother of pearl, and onyx. Drinks were served in gold goblets, with each goblet different from the others. There was royal wine in abundance, as befits royal bounty. The drinking was not according to any fixed rule, for the king had ordered the stewards to serve each man what he wanted. Also, Vashti, the queen, gave a banquet for the women in the royal house belonging to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the king was in high spirits from the wine, he ordered Mehuman, Vista, Harvona, Bigta, Avagata, Zetar, and Carcass, the 7 officers who attended him, to bring Queen Vashti before the king with the royal crown, in order to show the people and the officials her beauty, for she was indeed a good-looking woman. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the order of the king, which he had sent through his officers. This enraged the king. His anger blazed inside him. As was the king's custom, he consulted sages well versed in the matters of law and justice. With him were Karshna, Shatar, Admata, Tarshish, Miraz, Marsna, and Memucan, the most important officials in the kingdom. The king asked the sages, "According to the law, what should we do to Queen Vashti, since she didn't obey the order of King Ahasuerus conveyed by the officers?" Memucan presented the king and vice regents this answer: "Vashti, the queen, has wronged not only the king, but also all the officials and all the people in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. Because this act of the queen's will became known to all the women, who will then start showing disrespect toward their own husbands, they will say, 'King Ahasuerus ordered Vashti the queen to be brought before him, but she wouldn't come.' Moreover, the noble ladies of Persia and Media who hear of the queen's conduct will mention it to all the king's officials, which will bring about no end of disrespect and discord. If it pleases his majesty, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written as one of the laws of the Persians and Medes, which are irrevocable, that Vashti is never again to be admitted into the presence of King Ahasuerus, and that the king give her royal position to someone better than she. When the edict made by the king is proclaimed throughout the length and breadth of the kingdom, then all wives will honor their husbands, whether great or small." This advice pleased the king and the officials, so the king did what Memucan had suggested. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to each province in its own script, and to each people in their own language, that every man should be master in his own house and speak the language of his own people. All right.
A lot there.
There was. And I will say that, just to kind of start off, I read this twice. This is the 3rd time. And between the 1st and 2nd, I had a different perspective of what was going on. Like, it kind of completely changed, and I didn't expect that to happen. So kind of excited to see if you guys thought the same, or if it's just like not the right thinking.
That's interesting. I'm actually really curious to hear like what changed.
Yeah, go ahead, and I want to know.
Okay. So I guess like when I first read it, I've actually never personally read the Book of Esther for myself. And so that's why I'm really excited to be doing this. But I guess I kind of had a preconceived notion, like, oh yeah, Vashti, like, not listening to her husband, like, can't do that, and he's a king. So yeah, that's kind of like not good for you. And that's how I felt like when I read it the first time, like, okay, yeah, like, she didn't come, like, you can't do that, like, she's in the royal house, everyone would look at that and see that as like not obeying like what his royal king's officials are saying, right? Well, the second time I read it, I slowed down a little bit, and like in verse 10, when it says, "On the 7th day, when the king was in high spirits from the wine," I'm like, okay, he's drunk. and he's ordering her to come to show off her beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And me personally, like being around like some drunk people, they can become kind of like harassment type mentality. Like I kind of read it as like, like kind of like like she didn't want to be embarrassed. Like she didn't want to be paraded around maybe. And so maybe that's why she didn't go. And then he took great offense to that. And so I don't know if that's like right or wrong on her part. Like if it was because she was trying, like she didn't want to be around drunken men showing off her beauty.
I
sort of read it as well.
Yeah, that's what I get every single time. And it's
okay.
Yeah, it might be the culture of back then to do that, but that's so uncomfortable, as a female to read that and know that that's what you were supposed to do, listen to your husband. Anyway.
No,
that
yeah.
scenario, yeah. It's uncomfortable for sure.
So
anyway. But I mean, here's the thing though. I obviously these aren't people that we're supposed to look up to.
Right.
Those the king and that queen, they're not supposed to be what's that?
Like Israel, like they're not.
Exactly. I don't know if they have God in their lives, so it makes sense that people like that would be acting like that,
I mean, the whole story took place in like a Persian empire, in the place of Shushan, so more than likely they would not have had a godly life whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also speaks a lot that it appears that she did not go for the sake of like modesty or for the sake of not exposing herself to all of these drunken men. So that should be a good example to us that it's a person that is outside of the covenant that's behaving a certain way. So it just makes me think of how I need to make sure that what I'm doing is that same way or better. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Because like, I mean, we learn from like all, right? And so it's definitely something to like take away. But I guess I was just really surprised that the second time I read it, I was like, whoa, I didn't pick up on that the first time. And so it kind of sheds like a new light on like Vashti a little bit.
It does. I mean, I'm glad she didn't suffer death for that defiance. But I mean, at the same time, she kind of did a good thing. I mean, this is just, I want to say that it could have even gone as far as, like you're saying, harassment, abuse, or who knows what could have happened, right? When you bring in a woman, a beautiful woman, into a room full of drunken men in a Persian empire. I mean, I think I'm trying to say something without actually saying it because it's just, I don't really want to say it,
Yeah.
And her standing up to that, it could have costed her life, and it didn't, which is good, but it did cost her position. Anyways, I think you all know what I'm trying to say. That's just,
yes.
Yeah. But
what I think is, what I wonder, because I think we kind of all know that the Book of Esther comes into this at some point. And I actually wonder what she would have done, to be honest. Like, I wonder if it was Esther who was called before the king. I mean, we don't see the same scenario played out, but I do wonder, like, would she have gone? Would she have submitted to that,
Yeah, that's very true.
I don't know.
I just now read like chapter 2, like before this. And I kind of thought the same thing, but also, like sometimes like when you're in the darkness, or like when people that, don't know Yeshua, Christ, and they're around you, like have you ever had anyone be like when I'm around you, like I'm a better person, or like you make me like want to be better, because I can see like how like God has blessed you, or he favors you, or I can see the light in you. Like, you have people that are non-believers say that. And it kind of makes me think that even though Vashti probably stuck up for herself and she was banished and punished because of it, that, obviously God uses, even though maybe it wasn't okay or whatever, but he uses the situation with Esther, and like maybe like Esther kind of calms like the king, because they're obviously don't have the same faith, like when we get into that. But like maybe, it's like he favors her so much, and like that can only come from Yehovah, that maybe it like calms him or makes him a bit different.
This is jumping ahead, but I do want to ask, did Esther even get a choice back then? Because she got chosen, she was brought up by Mordecai, but did she really get chosen? Did she really say yes, or she was just kind of stuck with that position? But yeah, I mean, why she was chosen, though, it could be, like you're saying, a favor or a light, that the king was attracted to, for sure.
Well, it goes into that as we read. Like, we do see why she is chosen, and there's a couple of factors that play into it. But let's not skip ahead.
Okay. Cool. All right, so I'm just going to ask a loaded question. So at what point are we supposed to, like, step back, from do what Vashti did and say, this is enough. I'm no longer going to submit to this, to a marriage, I guess. I mean, not to say that I'm so thankful that I don't have a marriage that I would have to even get to that point. But I mean, for a lot of women, though, especially women that are trying to follow Torah or just follow God in general, they read the scripture and they say, oh, you have to submit to your husbands. So they stay in abusive relationships forever. And it's like, when is enough? So knowing whether Vashti did the right thing is important to know, right?
Right.
So when is enough, ladies?
Well, what I thought was interesting is the fact that he divorced her, put her away, whatever it was. She was the queen, he was the queen, the king, which means they're married. And because she didn't obey and come, he divorced her, and he went and he's like, all right, you're done. Let me find another woman. So that was in this, whatever this Persian thing is, that was grounds for, was it Persia? Sorry. It's grounds for divorce in this situation, according to them. So that's a really deep question, Gabby. And the truth is, there are a lot of women that I have met personally that have left abusive marriages, and they have been ridiculed. They have had people throw verbal stones at them, and they have been absolutely just torn apart by people for getting a divorce. And people have all sorts of doctrines about divorce. I'll just straight up say, like, I think if any woman is in an abusive relationship, that's not the reflection of who God that's not God's character whatsoever at all. And I'll say this, I'll just straight up, like, I was in a Facebook group, I'm no longer in it, where the woman in there was going to this group. She was admin. She was going to this group and saying that she's in an abusive marriage, a toxic marriage. She has a toxic relationship with her parents, and so on and so forth. And the truth is, you have a choice. You do. You can choose to stay and fight and try to make it work and stay in that, even if there's no change. Or you can choose to surround yourself with healthy people who are going to be there to help you put yourself back together, essentially. It makes me sad when women don't think they have a choice and that they have to remain a victim and when I'm talking about abuse here, I'm not just talking about a woman who's just like annoyed with her husband. Like, this is like abuse, adultery, this kind of stuff, just ongoing. I have a lot of strong opinions about this topic.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at the same time, you have, I don't know if this is a real thing. Have you guys heard of the rubber band effect? Or is that just a made up thing for marriage? Okay, it's just a made up thing. All right, anyways.
Well, like, explain it though, what it, like,
Okay.
what does it involve?
Someone told me that there's like a cycle for every 7 years of being married, or even the first 7 years. When you hit that 7-year mark is when tension kind of, explodes at that time in a marriage. That's usually, I haven't checked statistics, but it's like when people are more likely to get a divorce around the 7-year mark. And then again, if they make it past that mark, then at 14 years they kind of go through the same phase again. This is just something that was said to me, but the divorce rate is also so high that there is like you said, it's either going to be abuse or just I'm annoyed with my husband. There's a really good balance that people, I think, are very confused with what is what, and they'll just divorce just because. I mean, I want to say that they are doing it for the reasons that they should be doing it, but I don't know, I feel like submitting and giving yourself to your husband and vice versa. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the husband's role, because we are only supposed to know that we're supposed to submit to our husbands, right? If women don't really do that, they're probably never going to get the reciprocal to that from their husbands. I don't know, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm just trying to say there really is a fine line of when is abuse too bad. Well, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, people just divorce just because they divorce, but at the same time, people should be divorcing for certain things.
Right. Yeah. I think, like, the only thing, like when we look in scripture, like, Yeshua is our husband. Like, we are his bride. And never once does he, like, forsake his bride. Like, never once does he, like, subject her to, like, ridicule or, like, improper mistreatment. And, I think for women, like, if they are in any type of abusive relationship and that person is unwilling, like, there might be, like, underlining things, like drinking, addiction problems, or and addiction comes in all forms, not just like drugs and alcohol, like all sorts of different addictions, could be driving that. And if they're unwilling to, like, seek help, like, the partner that's doing the abusing, they're unwilling to see, like, the error of their ways, and they're not willing to go to counseling, and there's no other, like, spiritual, like, community or, like, leadership or, like, brethren that can step in and say, like, this is not right, then I think, you've exhausted all of your, like, not opportunities, but all of your paths, right? Like, we are supposed to try to reconcile ourselves. And if there's, like, no true repentance and there's no willing to change, then I think that's when, like, I think I would personally leave. So,
Sierra?
yeah.
I want to know what you think.
I think pretty much what y'all have said is pretty good. I mean, anything that a husband could be doing if he's in covenant, if it is, like, completely contrary to what the word says, then I think that should just raise red flags immediately. And then, I mean, abuse, like you already said, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and it just goes on and on and on. I think it would be a difficult decision from a person that is a Christian or is in covenant. It would be a hard thing to do, but sometimes it is something that has to be done. And then here in Esther 1, when it's talking about Vashti, I do think that what she did was a very good thing, because it just shows that she had more respect for herself than to just go out and have a parade in front of drunken men. And Vashti's name actually does mean beautiful. So her name also shows that she was a very beautiful woman, and she would not have been the queen if she wasn't.
Mhm.
So, oh, and I also read in another book, Vashti declining to go, obviously she was not the queen anymore, but it could have also put her as just another person that stayed in the palace. So she could have still been living there, but not have been the queen. So that would have been another pretty big downgrade for her to sit there and actually have to still watch everything. That's one thing that I saw. There's a bug on my glasses. Hold on.
Do you think kind of like a prison type situation or just jealousy type? What do you think?
I would say it'd be pretty. She would be jealous to sit there and watch everything. I could see that because she could be sitting there looking at when Esther comes in, what all she was getting, or whoever the king might have been with. But that's just what one book read, that she could have still been having to live there. But I don't know that for certain. So,
But I think too, she made the choice knowing the consequence, and she still made, I mean, because if you're a queen, you know the rules. Like, you're not like, oh, what's going on? I don't want to go today. Like, I need to do my makeup, whatever. Like, she knew the rules, and yet she chose to do that. But Sierra, I just wanted to really quickly comment on something you said that I think was really powerful. And you made the comment about covenant and a husband and a wife. And I do think that sometimes people, honestly, I'm just going to say this because I see it so much. People almost make marriage an idol, and they don't even realize like what marriage like encompasses. It is a covenant, and a covenant is a two-way street. And we can look at God's example. If he always says if and then, it's like, okay, there's a choice here, but both people have to be partaking in order for the covenant to be in existence. Once someone breaks covenant, like, that other person has a choice. So in my, from my point of view, if a husband, we'll just say a husband, but you know what? The truth is women abuse men too. Like, I've seen it. So if either spouse is abusing or cheating or doing whatever, and they're breaking the covenant with the spouse, like, I don't know. I think that people think that a covenant is like this magical thing that like goes above and beyond, when it's a contract. It's like this agreement between two people. It's not this like crazy thing that is like
Can't be broken.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then, like you said, it's up to them to choose, like, to continue in that covenant, renew it, or whatever that looks like, if there's true, like, repentance and willingness to change and do better, or to leave.
Exactly. So I just really want to point out something that I never noticed till we read this. This guy was so rich, you guys. His chair was made of gold. All of the cups he had were made of custom designed gold cups. Like, this guy would, I don't, does wealth like this even exist today? Where could we possibly go to find something so outrageous as this king? I don't even think it exists today. I don't know that anyone lives like this today.
I don't know either. Something interesting that this Bible says, like, because it says his name is Akashverosh, and it also says or Xerxes. Like, he was also known as Xerxes.
yeah, I think that could be in the Greek. I think that's what I read in one place, that Xerxes was his Greek name.
Right, but so it makes me like, when I was like kind of read this to my husband, to Brady, he was like Xerxes, like from 300. And I was like, I don't know, like, when, like, what year was that? Like, is this around the same time? Like, is it that guy? Because he shows up and he's like super wealthy. He has, I mean,
Is he
and
the
this
bald
says,
dude? Right?
yeah, this says 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. Like, that is like
Could be.
this Persia Empire at the time had like 4 capitals. And this is taking place like in the summer capital. Is what this like the beginning of this in this Bible particularly says. And so you're right, like, does wealth like that even like exist under like one person? Like, they're sitting in golden and silver chairs.
I know, it's insane.
So, and then so if you add that element into like Vashti saying no,
yeah,
and knowing like the law, like he can put her away.
Well, hold on. Wasn't the law done after? Didn't he seek counsel and then the law came about of what to do to her?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it says according to the law, what should we do to Queen Vashti,
Like,
since she didn't obey. So I guess maybe like within the law, like what it states, what are we allowed to do because of this?
yeah. You know, that saying that kind of tells me that she was the first one ever to kind of defy a husband or the king, you know. It seems like there was no law for it before because no one had ever done it.
Right.
So that's kind of cool to be the first one. I mean, I'm just saying, like, okay, she was the first one to stand up, I guess, to the king.
You
Go
know,
back to the riches that you were saying, Monica. Verse 4 says that when he showed all of his riches and the kingdom and the honor of the excellent majesty and on and on, says that he did it for 6 months. So he had 6 months set apart where he just showed everything that he owned, is what it seems like in this verse.
Yes.
It seems that same way.
yeah, that's how I saw it. And I was like, that is insane.
Like just like a huge like lavish parades and
For 6
parties.
months.
Yeah. But I guess if you have like 127 provinces, like you're like doing the royal tour. I don't know.
I can't picture what was going on. It's just so mind-blowing. Like how many days well, there was 2 feasts too, wasn't there? There was like the really long one and then there was a 7-day banquet.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Vashti also had a banquet of her own.
Right. For the women, it says, right?
Yeah.
For the women.
Yeah, that's verse 9.
Uh-huh.
Which that kind of makes me laugh because at every party or gathering or anything I've ever gone to, it's always like women on one side and men on the other side. It's like they've been doing it for a long time. You try not to, but it just ends up being that way.
Yeah.
I also have a question. I just thought of it. Would women have even been allowed to be in the banquet with the men, period, even if Vashti didn't have her own?
I don't know.
Or could that be another reason why it was really strange that he pulled her in if they weren't even allowed to be together?
You know, it might be because if he was like with all his officials, they could have been talking like head of state type things, and like women most definitely like weren't really a part of that, right?
Yeah, it kind of makes it seem like she was doing that banquet for the women. So it, by implication, all the women are there, not at the other banquet. But whether they were allowed to or not, that's
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know. Yeah.
What's interesting, Gabrielle, is that my translation, the officials is translated as eunuchs.
Mine too. What verse is that? Can you tell me a verse that has that? I want to look at the word.
Verse 14.
14.
Most important officials in the kingdom. But I think it said, mine uses that several times, like verse 14,
15.
verse 11, verse 3.
Can you tell me one of the verses, Monica, that says eunuchs?
So specifically, I see verse 10, there's verse 15, the 7 eunuchs, that's what I see, the 7 eunuchs, and then that's verse 10, and then verse 15 says, by bidding the king by the eunuchs.
For some reason, I can't find it right now. I don't know.
The Septuagint says by the Chamberlains.
Oh my god, we all have different translations.
I'd like to know like what the official word, like
The Hebrew word, right?
Hebrew.
What is, okay,
I'm trying to find the verse. I'm struggling to find this right now.
Go to Esther 1, verse 15, and read through that.
It should be at the very end.
Yeah, at the very end.
KJV says chamberlains.
So go with that.
The language is from an unused root meaning to castrate a eunuch.
Okay, so
it means eunuch. Yeah, it's the Hebrew word is saris. So
is
eunuch
is
castrate a eunuch.
So a eunuch
is
a man who has been castrated. That's the name of a man, a eunuch.
I wonder
if you're a eunuch, they've been castrated. They have to be a eunuch.
All of it.
Yes. That's why the eunuchs were in charge of. In chapter 2 and a few later chapters, you'll see that the eunuchs were the ones that were used to help guard the women that were prospective wives for the king. So
it would make sense
he had
if it would
all eunuchs there to do the stuff with the women to make sure that they didn't, I don't know what, but
they didn't see them as like a threat.
Yeah.
So there's 2 definitions, guys.
Okay.
So I guess one is individually loses use of testicles, so those are gone. And then sometimes it's used to refer to emasculation, where both the testicles and this special area is completely removed together.
That's, because I don't, like we have bodily functions, like how, I don't know how that works. I don't know how you live, like how you survive that.
I mean, it should, if these men are supposed to be guarding the female and the king appointed these men, it makes sense that the king would do that to them or have them be that, so they don't have that. I mean, they'll have less urges because of that. So it does. Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was done. So
if a big surgery like that is performed and they didn't have any of the medical stuff that we have today, how would they do that without having like a very bad issue come about with blood or whatever? Like it just says that they had a natural way to do something like that we don't really use today.
It seems like they would have had like a really good system, protocol, like whatever you want to call it, like with that, like how Egyptians can like preserve mummies for like really well. Like, okay, they obviously were in the know of not Western medicine to be able to perform these like effectively.
I think the general most common, from what I'm looking up online, is just to cut off the 2 and not the main organ.
Okay, that's what I thought. Like, that's kind of like what my husband explained to me. He was like, no, like, I was like, okay.
This is just super random. One of the things that comes up in the search: benefits of castrating your husband. Guys, what is going on in this world?
Oh my God. Are they just talking like a vasectomy type? Are they saying that's castrating or no?
I think no, because vasectomy is different. You don't cut the 2 testicles off. You go in and you actually cut a little, like a little tube, essentially, that prevents the
seed
from the seed from being able to enter. But castration actually is the act of cutting them off, and it says the benefits of castrating your husband.
Oh my gosh, get out of that rabbit hole.
I'm done.
I just want to point out, I just noticed that the Septuagint verse 5, where it talks that when it goes on to the 7-day feast, The Septuagint says that it was the marriage feast, or the days of the marriage feast were completed, or when the days of the marriage feast were completed, the king made a banquet to the nations who were present, in the city 6 days. So I mean, none of the other, what's it called, translations say anything about a marriage feast. So I was like, I don't know.
Could it possibly be that other nations were joined in with the 127 provinces?
Oh,
Maybe a
Yeah,
marriage
like
or
not,
something like that. Not actually like husband-wife marriage, but like
okay.
welcoming another group of people in. I don't know. That's just what came to my mind.
or yeah, maybe like marriage is like translated to like, yeah, just like a like some sort of honorary festival celebration amongst the nations.
Okay. And I was thinking, you know how usually marriage feasts are 7 days?
Mm-hmm.
They had, so maybe he like paraded everywhere, all the provinces, married all the provinces, and then the 7-day feast was celebrating that, maybe?
I don't
I don't
know.
know. I thought it was pretty,
Yeah.
the 7-day, or the 7th day kind of is intriguing for me with the whole feast thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I have some interesting points to point out about the Book of Esther. This doesn't have anything to do with Vashti or anything. It's just pretty much a general overview of the Book of Esther. Some things that I saw that I thought was interesting. God is not mentioned at all in the Book of Esther. Prayer is not mentioned at all in the Book of Esther, and worship is not mentioned in the Book of Esther.
Yes.
One thing that is mentioned later is fasting, which I think is cool, so I'm ready to get to that part. But those are 3 things that I thought were sort of interesting that are not mentioned at all in this book.
Well,
But you can see God's hand throughout the whole thing, so you can see him lining everything up, but it's still interesting that he's not specifically mentioned.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just, to your point, I think in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Esther was the only book among all of the Old Testament that was not found. And there's a lot of theories as to why. And one of the biggest theories is because specifically God is not mentioned.
Yeah, there are some other points that I found too, if y'all want to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
The law is not mentioned at all in the book, even though Jews have a large part in the book, but the law is not mentioned. Not from what I saw. What did Esther eat when she was the queen? The king did not know she was Jewish. Would the king have been eating stuff that was possibly unclean? Would that have been all Esther had to eat? That's just a thought. I don't know. And then Esther was a part of the king's harem.
The king's what?
Harem.
What's that?
Let me get a definition pulled up here for harem.
I mean, they could have also been eating separately too.
Right.
So,
But it was just an idea of.
She had favor still though, so I don't know.
It is, so right here it says that it's a household reserved for wives, concubines, and female servants. So it's not, okay, so Esther would have been like the wife, but different concubines or different whatever. So she was a whole group of people like that.
Yeah, she was the queen, and that's why, like, when they said like a Kashvaraj or Xerxes, like, did make me think of the character in 300. And it is Persia. Like, it says like this, this is all taking place, like Babylon had captured like Israel, and then King Cyrus came in and kind of liberated them and decreed that they can go back if they want, that they don't have to be like in exile or captive. But most of them, it says, like, had assimilated, and like they didn't want to go back. Like, it says, notably, the Book of Esther does not directly describe God's activity of controlling, overruling, or guiding the events of the story, nor is God's name mentioned. The fact that so many Jews did not return to Israel points to their reluctance in identifying with the God of Israel. Perhaps the geographical displacement and the spiritual indifference of the Jews helps explain the absence of the terms as temple, sacrifice, Torah, prayer, and even God. Nevertheless, the reader senses God's activity through the author's use of irony and through the placing and reversal of events. The absence of God's name does not indicate lack of involvement. God is actually very involved and near. So, because like Persia is not, like, that is not God's chosen place.
Yeah.
Like, they were definitely in a nation that was not their own. So maybe they had given up some customs or requirements, but he still wanted to preserve his people during this time. You know, he doesn't forsake his bride.
Yeah.
And
And
go on.
oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
This is sort of on a side note. Martin Luther, which was a huge leader in the Protestant Reformation, he was also a theologian. There's a quote that I found of him talking about the Book of Esther, and it says that he is known to have tossed the book into the river Elbe and said that he wished it never existed, for it has too much Judaism and a great deal of heathenish imagination. So somebody that was possibly a leader in the Protestant Reformation wanted to throw it out because it had too much Judaism in it. So I thought that was sort of interesting to see and to read that.
Yeah. And Gabby, you sent the description you sent it to everyone, so I was able to read it. I mean, something too, when we talk about Mordecai, there's definitely something off, I thought. Like, he was a little bit manipulative. I don't know if that's how it'll read in the text, but that's what it seemed like on that picture that you sent, the description. Yeah. So anyways, like, I do get some weird feelings about this. What's really going on, right? But anyway, we'll get there, I guess, when we get there.
I think it's interesting. Sierra, where did you get the information that she was part of the king's harem?
I think it does it not say it? Eventually?
Esther or Vashti? Or both?
I think both. If they're queen, they would, I guess, make
Well, if you think of Solomon, if you think of King Solomon, he had concubines and he had wives, and they were sort of all called the harem, right?
I mean, David too, for that matter.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very like cultural thing. Like, you know what I mean?
These kings, King Solomon and David included, and this Xerxes or whatever his name is. So these kings, not only did they have insane amounts of wealth, because from what I understand, Solomon wasn't only the wisest, but I think he was also the wealthiest. So wealthy that the queen, what was her name, Sheba, came to see the wealth, which makes me think that Solomon might have put this king in Esther to shame, which is crazy to even fathom. But not only were these kings super wealthy, like eating off of gold plates, sitting in gold chairs, they had all these women. Like, they had a wife, they had a concubine. I mean, what on earth is going on here? What, it's just so crazy to me. And I get it. Like, I do get it that in those times it was different. Women couldn't just hop on the internet and open a school and make money. Like, women couldn't do the things. They didn't have as many maybe opportunities, although maybe in Proverbs 31 that might dispel that.
Well, I think maybe too, like, it's like a dominance type thing, like probably in that time in culture, having many women probably did display more wealth because you can provide.
Oh, that's really
like you're able to provide for more. And, you know, women died a lot easier in childbirth. And, you know, it was just different. You know, there was if like a freak accident happened, like, okay, like you're done, like no more, like you're not here anymore, because but I think, yeah, it was probably like another displayment of like wealth, but of course it's probably like some greed or lust, um, to fulfill appetite and to create more bloodlines,
I mean,
heirs, because kids, they would die riding horses, like, whatever. So
but like,
trying to preserve
didn't Solomon have
800 wives.
like, dude, how do you have sex with that many? That's like, you can't even do that in a year if you have one, like, let's say you have one per day. Like, how I'm sorry, I just think about these things. Like, how do you do that?
Wait, so is the question, did this king have other wives, or I'm a little bit lost.
I was talking about the harem, but
The harem is the place where these women were, or the harem where the group of women?
Yeah. Harem's like a terminology used to like describe, like, in, I believe, like Middle Eastern type cultures, like that's what they describe their like woman horde. Like
Women, okay.
like I'm sorry. I really should have said it. Like, all
Okay.
of their wives. I don't know.
Okay, so we're just talking about him having a ton of wives. Okay.
concubines, wives, I don't know, queens,
Okay, what?
whatever. There are all these women that are his, and I am going to assume that they're all sleeping with him. 800 of these women, not even 2 years, one a day. You couldn't even get through all of them in 2 years, you guys. Think about that.
Well, maybe it was like 3 times a day or something.
How would he be king? How would he have time to do anything? He would be laying in bed all day. That makes no sense. Oh,
I don't know.
anyway.
It was 700 wives and 300 concubines is what it is.
Okay, so 1,000.
1,000.
That's 1,000 women.
Could you imagine providing for, like, you're wealthy.
I mean, like, are there no STDs involved because all these 1,000 women are virgins? Is that what this is about?
That was definitely a big deal, though, being a virgin back then.
It was, absolutely. So then that means no STDs for Solomon.
Well, I was just about to say, trafficking, but if you're mentioning STDs, then all those women should not have been, trafficked or given, or you know what I mean?
No, they should have just been his. And
exactly, yeah.
His.
Maybe there's no STDs back then.
I think that's a whole nother, like,
that's a whole nother Bible study.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
We got a lot of juicy things coming up.
Yeah.
But it mentions the harem in chapter 2. I was just kind of looking a little bit ahead, and he's definitely coming and going from the harem, as it says. So
he's coming and going from all these women.
Right. But then the fact that, like, okay, so they are like kind of like in an exiled land, and he puts away Vashti, and then we're going to get to him finding favor in her, and God using her, because his presence is throughout this. But like you pointed out, Sierra, like the names, like the temple, like maybe they were kind of like wayward, like if all these things aren't being mentioned, it's not showing like what they were doing. But she was raised to honor. Yeah. Interesting things.
Juicy.
It is. I'm like, is this like a soap opera? What is it, like telenovela?
Yeah.
What it seems like.
I wish they would make like a soap opera for all of this stuff.
Like,
because some of this is really that type of stuff, like very dramatic, I want to say.
Yeah.
But anyway, it would be fun to watch nonetheless.
All right.
All right, well, I guess any other comments, questions, concerns? That
So I mean, we can keep going because we haven't even gone through talked about half the chapter yet. But I think okay. So then they bring up her not listening, and then they're like, okay, this we needed because obviously this is a big deal. Like people are gonna be gossiping, like Vashti didn't obey the king. Vashti didn't obey the king, and so he's like, hold up, we need to fix this now. And then he consults his eunuchs or his people, whatever, and they're like, okay, it says, for the queen's behavior will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands with contempt. And so they need to come up with a solution quick. So I do understand the idea behind being submissive and obeying your husband, and I respect that as long as he is a husband that is like obeying Torah and like keeping God's commandments. Absolutely. A man like that you want to submit to, you want to respect and obey because you love him, you know, you respect him, he loves you. It's totally biblical. I just wonder what the men were like back then too. Like if this simple act would literally cause all the women, you know, to rebel or be, I don't know, it's just.
for a culture that did not have social media, that news is spreading really fast. I just want to point that out.
I didn't think of that.
Or they might have just been exaggerating to get the king to do something, but they're saying every woman in your, like, well, no, it's a big exaggeration.
7 provinces.
Yeah. But I mean, people still are very gossipy, but what else? I mean, you don't have TV to see back then, so you just talk.
So, like, but kind of like what you just said, like at the beginning of that, like, because it does say that his anger blazed inside him, like when she like defied his orders. And so also like the second time when I was reading this and it starts getting into his officers or eunuchs, whatever, like it's almost like they wanted to come up with something kind of like outrageous to appease that rage and anger. Like
that's interesting.
With, you know, like with what you just kind of said, Gabby, like they had something against, like, you know, or like maybe they didn't like her themselves and they're like, this is like how we can get rid of her. But it does kind of seem like they're appeasing to like his man tantrum.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
his mantrum.
Yeah, or whatever. His kingly tantrum. And they're like, oh, we don't want him to be mad. Like, we better come up with something like really good, like that's within the law that can appease him.
Yeah. And a interesting thing about this culture was that once you made a rule, you couldn't undo the rule. I thought that was just way crazy that you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, same with here, that they must have known that whatever they said and they recommended to the king, it was going to stick forever, you know? So I'm just glad it wasn't death. It's just me.
Yeah. Because it does, hold on, I'm trying to find it. Where it says that she was supposed to be, hold on, sorry. Does it say in here that like he puts her away to where she's not ever able to be in? Oh yeah, that Vashti is never again to be admitted into the presence of King Ahasuerus. I think that's in 19.
Yes, I was just reading that too. It is 19.
So, I mean, it does kind of seem, I don't know which one of you guys said it, but like, I think maybe it was Sierra, like, maybe she did like stay at the palace or wherever they were, but she just like wasn't allowed to like ever see him or be made known in his presence.
And this verse sort of seems like he put her out of the palace completely, because it says, "And let the king give her royal estate unto another."
Royal.
But that means like the empire, the kingdom, royalty. So I'm not sure.
Her position, her status, maybe.
Yeah.
But I guess it just clicked that this is the decree that as to why Esther couldn't go up to him. So from this on, no wife or no queen could just walk up to him because of that rule.
I actually think that this is just having to do with Vashti not being able to go before him because she disobeyed. I think that it's no one could go before the king that was not asked to come before the king, whether it was a queen or whether it was anybody. That's what I'm thinking that I read when going through the first part of the book.
Okay. It says that I guess it just depends too how the decree was written, because this one just says the queen, which the queen can be filled with any person. But if it says the Queen Vashti, then it's specifically talking about that one person. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Again, we'll more details when I get to that part as to what they were referring to.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And it is like also too, like at the very end, you know, when it says that he sent letters to all the royal provinces, to each province in his own script, and to each people in their own language, like that was like that's social media, like that's like she was blacklisted.
So
like,
127
you know what
provinces.
Yeah, like her indiscretion like was made known.
She was made an example of.
Yeah. But if it was because she was saying no, like, I'm not going to go like in a room full of drunk men. Like, I don't just kind of thinking of Vashti here. Before we jump straight to Esther, like saving the day, like, dang, like, it's like a brand. Like she was branded.
It's kind of crazy because it says, "And let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she." So basically, guys, just putting that out there, like, she disobeyed, I'm going to find someone better. Like, it's almost like kind of, I understand it almost like a threat, like, wives, get your stuff together because you could be replaced by someone better.
Mm-hmm. I guess so.
Well, did you guys have anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Not right now.
No, not right now.
So, well, cool. For those of you who are joining us, any thoughts, anything that you guys want to add to this, please feel free to leave anything in the comments. We'll definitely be sure to do our best to respond to you guys. And we hope that you join us for our next study. We, like, I know some of it is kind of silly, like some of the stuff that we say. We're just being really raw, authentic, and real. We're not trying to censor anything here. And, these are things that legit might even pass through or go through maybe some of you, those of you who are joining us, like your thoughts maybe. But yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please feel free to comment, and don't forget to join our channel if this is a group that you feel like you would like to continue with. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.